Okay, hello again. This is Modern Guitar Harmony, and today we have Johannes Haage, and I'd like to welcome him to a chat about the Goodrick Almanacs, the Advancing Guitarist, and his wonderful book, Voice Motion. And he has written a large format book on triad voice motion that we'll hear all about in the second half of this session. But first, I'd just like to welcome Johannes and ask about his original experience with the Advancing Guitarist and the Almanacs, which seems to have led to this project.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So what brought you to the Almanacs? Your teacher showed you a copy of it, I think you said.
Well, when I was like 16, maybe, I had a teacher and he had gone to Berkeley and just told me to get the Advancing Guitarist book. And and I came back to it ever since I got it. And I found it very interesting from the beginning. At first, I didn't really know what to do with it. But then, it's been a great companion. So, and then talking about the almanacs, they were much later, right? When did they come out? In like 2000, the first one maybe.
Yeah.
So I read about them when they came out, got the first one, and around the same time I started to work with the George Van Epps volumes too, like the harmonic mechanisms, and they kind of went together for me a while, and I was really drawn into the conclusiveness of the almanacs, the whole idea of showing every possible kind of voicing and chord structure and just the idea of cycles. That was in the beginning, that was kind of new to me to think of just moving within one chord structure, and then cycling through within a scale. So that opened up a lot of pathways and accompaniment. And
Does anything stick in your mind from your early experience with the Almanacs? Anything that you played on the guitar that you thought this is a breakthrough point? I could suggest the difference between the Almanacs and the harmonic mechanisms is the contrary motion that Goodrick uses.
You think that's one big difference there, or?
It's a huge difference in that he can play a descending sequence of chords which are going up on the theoretical roots.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, you're talking about like instead of going like up the scale with the chords like this, right?
Yeah.
It's like you play C and then
down to D minor. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, that's one thing that was new to me, and it definitely started some process, especially when you start putting like filling in the gaps or something like if putting in the filling in that third that kind of comes out of that cycle. So yeah, that got me thinking. I remember that, and just thinking about close voice leading, like a cycle of 4 or 5. It's still hard for me to do in all keys, but really started some process.
Yeah. We talk a lot with the Almanacs Zoom meetings about getting off page, and we do attempt to have something of the concept where you can think of the concept and go to a new key and start to add the keys to the set of capabilities. It seems to match, for me, I apply it to pieces occasionally. I apply it to technical exercises that I'm trying to develop a certain technique. Are there any things that you found in the almanacs that got directly into your playing? Because that seems to be a sticking point with some people's experience with the almanacs.
Well, what I always found interesting is that the almanacs were not really kind of like a direct influence, where it's like, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to play this on such and such chord next time I
Yeah.
play that tune or something. But it just kind of in general kind of made the notes that you would usually play as a kind of a constant chord structure, more a little bit more liquid or something, that if that makes any sense,
Yes, it does.
and also I don't know if you had the same experience when you play a cycle for a longer period of time. It kind of starts moving by itself.
Yes, yes.
You know what I mean?
It's
So
a strange
how
experience.
it's like, the kind of the system of, if it's three notes, it kind of cycles every three chords because you have the same inversions, that kind of stuff. So what happens sometimes is that I play some kind of move that made sense harmonically within a tune, and maybe my mind or my hand kind of intuitively detected that cycle that it was, and then maybe it just kind of did the next one in the row or something, and which does that make any sense? Like,
It does. It does.
so it's kind of like that trust in your ear that you do the next voice leading, kind of you let it kind of voice lead by itself or something. So that happened a lot, and yeah, it's kind of a mysterious thing that happens then when that happens.
I wonder if some of this mystery is the fact that as guitarists we are less likely to be using inversions of triads and seventh chords, and the almanacs pushes you to use those first inversions, second inversions, all of the time in sequence, so you get much more comfortable with the sound of
That's
your
true.
inversions. And I think
Yeah.
that was
Also with the 4-part chords, there's always this one or two inversions that are just kind of either uncomfortable to play, or just with the I don't know, the flat 9 or something in there,
yeah, yeah.
and it kind of forces you to go through them while you cycle or something. It's true.
And
Yeah,
even those dissonances, those flat nines, the awareness of them's useful. Even if you're not using them, you almost know that the stepping stone is there, even if it's a wobbly stepping stone.
it's true.
So
Yeah.
I found that a lot with them. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, and then and then the second one came out, and eventually the third, and by then I knew a couple of people who were working with them, so like colleagues, and it just for a while was just something I would kind of do as a routine or something, and then kind of trust it, trust that it would seep into my playing and somehow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I worked a lot
That's the
with.
way to go with that stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, sometimes there would be a move or something that would be, "Oh, okay, I could do this in a very specific environment," but usually, some of the stuff sounds weird in the beginning. You know
yes.
what I mean? So you kind of just play it and be like, okay, maybe, yeah, let my unconscious figure out when to when to bring this out in the music,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of thing. So yeah, um, yeah.
I found very.
On the guitar, it's so complex with fingerings, and I mean, we're so constrained
Hmm.
on the fingerboard, as opposed to on the keyboard, that it's hard enough to kind of be flexible and independent. But I think this stuff is a good way to kind of unlock it a little bit. And
Are you a trained keyboard player as well as a guitarist?
not so much, unfortunately. I do practice a little bit because I want to be faster in finding stuff, and
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm not that great of a pianist.
As a
I
complete
use it a lot
set,
for composition and stuff. So
yes, yes. As a complete set of harmony, I think this may be quite rare as a phenomenon even for keyboard players. I'm thinking of the reviews of the almanacs by keyboard players such as Russell Ferrante. And when he's surprised by the content of the almanacs, I think that means it's quite rare for keyboard players to be finding this information in one place as a set.
right.
And the strangeness, I don't find that strangeness in the harmonic mechanisms by Van Epps, although there is a little of it in the block diagrams at the end of volume 1 of the harmonic mechanisms.
What is the strangeness you're referring to? What?
Near the end of George Van Epps' harmonic mechanisms, volume 1, he uses some chromatic bass notes against little groups of 3 triads.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that sounds
So
very,
one triad's going down, and then the bass note's going up. That's a
Yeah.
great exercise. Yeah,
it's fabulous. He cycles, there's maybe a dozen or 2 dozen of those things with
yeah,
different
it's beautiful.
progressions. And it's very close to what then led into the almanac disciplines. And
Yeah, it's true.
I'm sure there's some connections there with the Berkeley tradition, the Schillinger
Right.
Berkeley traditions. But with the triads, there seemed to be less predictability in the inversion changing in the almanacs. The Van Epps takes a first inversion and just does everything. Second inversion does everything. Whereas
Yeah, because it's not changing. Yeah. He's taking everything kind of up and down the scale in steps, more or less, or thirds sometimes, right? Yeah.
yeah,
And I mean, his stuff is also all about, all different fingerings for the same thing. So you prepare yourself for, when you want to free up your first finger or something like that, and you play everything, that kind of thing. And the almanacs are not about that at all, right?
that applies beautifully though. If you think of the Van Epps fingering in an application to the almanacs, it's so useful.
Sure. Yeah. It
Feel the
makes
fabric.
you think about these things, but they're not, stated
Yeah,
as
yeah. So little is. That's the strange thing. It's so much down to us.
yeah. It's true.
So we've talked a little about your initial experience of the almanacs. You told me you have a different set of ways of naming the triad over bass notes. So the triad with a second in the bass, triad with a fourth in the bass, Goodrick calls triad TBN2 and TBN1. The second has 2 in the bass, TBN2, and the fourth in the bass is TBN1. But we agreed, chatting privately before, that it's a strange way of naming them once you start inverting these entities, where the bass note's no longer the low voice.
It's true. I mean, that's one reason why I never really liked the TBN terminology. The other is that TBN doesn't really. I mean, it's not really musical. Triad or bass note, and if you call it something that you already know, like I just call them triads plus 9 or triad plus 11. If you say C add 9 or like a major triad plus the 9,
Yeah, a major
that
seventh plus a ninth.
something that you can imagine and work with. And if it's like, I don't know, TBN or C over D, that implies something very different for me,
Yes.
at least.
Yes.
I mean, I think of this, right? Which is the same thing, but it's like a different, it's like a sus chord type thing.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
doesn't really suggest this general kind of voicing, like it's, that you would, that kind of stuff that, you would invert or have as a unit, as a unit to work with. So
Yeah.
that I never really understood why he went there. Call it TBN or so.
I think there'll be a reason. I've got a few. I could run with that challenge, I think. But at the same time, I do like the idea that we lose the bass note. It goes up into the triad, but we also lose the triad. There's something very odd and ambiguous about that whole construction.
Because it gets kind of shaded.
Yeah. For example, what would it be? C over F.
Mhm.
We lose the C triad if you start to think of that as F major 9.
Sure, yeah.
But
I mean, they're ambiguous.
the F can come up into a second arrangement with the E, and you suddenly lose the bass note F as well.
It's true. I mean, but if you think of all these chords that are not, seventh chords or triads, they're all ambiguous when you start inverting them. So
Yeah.
you have to find some name that you want to stick with just to have a clear enough category for yourself in your mind, to be, to put them in. I think that's important. And we talked about it too. The fourth, the way he categorizes the fourth voicings is also something that I find, or that I would do differently, in the book as well. Like, I'm not sure what does he call the the 4-part fourths? Does he just call them 4-part fourths? No,
3-part fourths and 4-part fourths.
Right. And yeah, with the 3-part fourths, he sometimes goes and calls them like 9. Is that like C9 or something?
Don't remember that. I haven't got them with me today here.
Right. And I mean, in the voice motion, I just call them by the 2/4 that they, that make up the root position, 3-part chord, because they're so ambiguous. They're just a different category. So
In some of my other conversations with people about the almanacs, I've become very defensive of the emphasis on 4-part harmony. And I think it's probably some of my classical guitar background just bubbling up, that it's seductive and fascinating, and taps into the Bach chorale tradition and
the 4-part.
yeah, the 4-part theory. Yeah, a few people have said 3-part is the way. Go for the 3-part, and you've convinced me with your book that the 3-part harmony has got so much more mileage. It felt as if it was something you could go beyond when the almanacs moves from triads, open spread triads, into the 4-part harmony. There is more 3-part harmony reappears in volume 3 of the almanacs, which is very useful. But I'm very interested in your own approach to the 3-part harmony that has become your center of focus. Did you take some 3-part harmony ideas from the Advancing Guitarist and from the almanacs?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I work with the cycles and the just the diatonic and the modes, the modal harmony stuff from the Advancing Guitarist, and I have to say that the 4-part stuff is really super interesting in the almanacs. It's just that you kind of use up all your fingers, and if you want to think about, and that's what my book is basically about, is when you want to move voices independently, once you play 4 notes, a lot of times you can't really, it's very constrained. You can't really move much independently. So with three notes is different. There's much more freedom, because you have most of the time you have one more finger to use, or different ways of fingering stuff. So
Plus the open strings, of course.
that's the open strings. And I mean, if you really want to go through all theoretically possible movements within 4-part chords, that is just mathematically so much more.
Oh yeah.
And, you know what I mean? It's just much more. Also, I mean, at the same time, most of the stuff's not really playable on the guitar.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
for the 3-part too. Like especially the close voice stuff. Some of the things are not really playable, but at least in theory, a lot of the stuff actually is playable if you
Yes. Yes.
move it up, or you use the open strings, or you move it up the guitar. Yeah, I'm amazed how much of the stuff actually is playable on the guitars.
And it's key specific. It will become playable in one key but not another. As jazz guitarists, we might be inclined to play in all keys. We are always told to practice in every key, but some are dedicated guitar key friendly or guitar key very, very alien.
Definitely. I mean, that's because of the open strings mostly,
Yeah.
And then also some stuff would, sound kind of mediocre in just the major scale, but if you, put it in a different key and a other diatonic or other heptatonic scale,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of a sudden it's really nice, That's another thing with the almanac stuff. Like some cycles, they sound kind of bland if you play them in the diatonic, but if you just play it in harmonic major or something, just that one different note,
Yeah.
all of a sudden gives you these really cool moves. So that's something I learned kind of by or not by accident, but just by working with the almanacs to really try different scales and different keys to kind of see where the treasure is in a cycle. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, we were at 3-part, 4-part harmony. What's the question? Yeah.
Yes, the 3-part harmony has so much more mileage in it than the almanacs 1 and 2 give you
Right.
the feeling
Yeah.
of, because it deals with the 3-part triads and 3-part fourths, and then it jumps into such a forest of 4-part harmony, which is very seductive, very, very interesting, and there's a lot of it.
Right.
And yes, I'd agree with you that the 3-part harmony has got a fascination. I'm very interested in the fact that people working with the almanacs in the Zoom groups that we've had have been saying, spend more time on the 3-part harmonies. It's a great recommendation. It's a very interesting recommendation.
Yeah, and putting everything in open voicing as well. Well, stuff that maybe you play in close voicing,
Yeah.
try to do everything in open as well. Yeah, and if you want to talk about how I got to, how I got the idea for my book, was that, when I worked with, and probably everyone starts realizing when you work with the almanacs, you always stay within one chord type. I mean, in volume 3, that's different sometimes, but for most of the stuff, or for the main body of work, you take a triad or, thirds, stacked thirds, and you cycle that type of voicing through the cycles, right? Which results in some kind of movement of the voices, right? And a lot of times when I, kind of observed myself playing, or when I played around, I would move around certain notes, but they would not, result in triad going into a triad. They would result from triad moving into something else, which is just, something that comes off this motion that I would play. You know what I mean?
Yes, you find a rabbit hole.
Yeah, and a lot of times, when you do something, it does not result in the same kind of chord structure, right? So and that's true for a lot of stuff in the Van Epps books. But in the Van Epps books, a lot of these, he's talking about the super and sub stuff,
Yes.
which is just a single voice or more voices moving in any direction. But then he doesn't really formalize them or categorizes the movements. He just kind of gives you all of these pages and all these keys and with all these fingerings, which is great. I mean,
Of course, they're in all keys as well, aren't they? I forgot.
yeah, it's just
Volume 2 of Van Epps, yeah.
it's amazing, but it can totally overwhelm you. And I just wanted to know how many ways there are of movement within these, let's say, a triad. What can you actually do? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
apart from one move in all keys and all fingerings, I just wanted to kind of like categorize these different moves, which was the initial kind of question for voice motion. And
Yeah, I've remembered the question I had about the three-part uses of the almanacs. Were you moving through the seventh chords omitting a note, and is there a system to omit the fifth or drop the root in certain inversions or something? Did you find methods of using the four-part harmony systematically with only being selective and picking three notes? And possibly
like a musical situation where you
yeah, I may be asking a music theory question there that I should know the answer to, but obviously don't. When do you omit a note of a seventh chord systematically to produce three-part harmony? Dropping the fifth seems obvious. You've got the harmonic of the fifth in the root.
right. I mean, the most obvious to me would be to omit the root, right? Because
Okay.
maybe the bass player
Yeah.
would play the root anyway. So if you have the C major 7 chord, you would just
Third of
work
seven.
off the E minor, right?
Yeah.
So that to me is that is a good starting point, I think,
Okay.
to just kind of start with that E minor, or use an upper structure that you like, right?
Yeah. I'm thinking of chords like 705 and 703. I'm wondering
Right.
if you systematized those at all.
Did I? Sorry, did I?
Did you systematize them when you were working with the almanacs? Did you find that they were arising from your almanac work?
Yeah, I mean, he just uses them and as separate chords, right? 705 and 703.
They come through in volume 3 and in the book with Tim Miller, the GMC. He starts to identify them as separate entities then.
Oh, are they not in volume
I
1?
don't remember them being in volume 2. I could be wrong.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong. I haven't got chapter and verse on this yet. I'm working at it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, they're just separate. They're just one of the 5 different
Yeah,
3-part chords that are really useful. I
yeah,
mean,
definitely.
totally. Yeah, I mean, especially the no 5. Um, yeah, omitting the fifth. If it's a natural fifth, it's a very natural thing to do and frees up a lot of space and also space for fingers and stuff. So yeah.
I'm finding even recently I'm doing this more and more just instinctively when I'm playing through standards or jamming with people. I'm finding those voicings are under my fingers now and I can play games with them. So you can think in the music as you're jamming. And that's something that's come quite new to me quite late in my playing.
You mean the 703, 705?
Yeah, and just the movement of voices where you're not playing all 4 notes in the 7th chord.
Right. I mean,
What
I've always.
talking about.
I mean, if you play like a minor 7 or something, like if I've always kind of omitted the bass note for myself, just
Yeah.
to be more flexible,
Yeah.
and So I'm kind of thinking from 3 notes. I'm kind of starting with 3 notes most of the time, or the 3 and the 7, and then kind of going from there or something. So yeah, so you might kind of see this as a D minor 9 or this,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And what something that I kind of came across the other day was because I was thinking about just the intervallic buildup of any chord, right? Like, and if you have a chord that's not symmetrical, like a root position triad, which is 2/3, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you always have kind of like a reflecting counterpart that is the same thing, but from the other, like from like a triad. If simply like if you have a first inversion triad is a fourth
Yeah.
up here, and the third, and then this would be kind of the intervallic reflection of it, right? Because it's you have a third up here and the fourth below.
Got you. Got you. So it's
You know?
that's closed and spread in some terminologies, but I noticed you have a different way of thinking about these too.
No, just I mean, if you just think heptatonically, like you have
Yeah.
a third and a fourth,
Yes.
and if you kind of look from the top and you just kind of flip you have a fourth and a third. So those two are related in that sense, right? Like,
That's important. That's a really interesting area to
okay,
explore.
so what you can do, and with the seventh note 3, the seventh note 5 and the seventh note 3, they're reflection pairs. Let's just call them that. So
Okay.
third on top, fifth down here, that's the seventh note 5, right?
Yeah.
Third down here and fifth up here, that's the seventh note 5. So you can even like start with that, and instead of going up like the same type, you could also go like that would be that one, right? But you could, well, what did I? This and this, right? These are the two. So
I'll experiment with those.
the thing is that I'm trying to kind of go up the scale, alternating with these reflections.
Yes. Yes.
The thing is that the middle voice, and I'll show you something with 4 voices as well. Like the middle voices will change, kind of going against the direction of what you're doing. So this one is seventh note 5, right?
Okay.
And then seventh note 3 would be the next one up instead of going. Does that make sense?
Can you name those chords again? Play them and name them as you play them. It's
Or
major seventh, no 5. Yeah.
so C major 7,
Yes. No 5.
no 5,
Yeah.
and then you play the D, but you don't play the no 5, but you play the no 3,
No 3. Okay. D no.
and then you play E,
D minor 7 no
no
3.
5,
7 no
and
5.
then
Got it. Yes. I'll
right.
explore those.
So you alternate, and so you get this motion where it's like, so you go right in the middle, so you can get kind of. All of a sudden, like something happens within the middle voice there that can be very interesting. Also, if you look at the 4 part, like I don't know, TBN 2 or something, like C major, like with a 9.
Yes.
So the reflection of that would be, which is the other one, the other TBN is kind of the intervallic reflection of that.
Okay,
Okay.
I've been down
6,
this road. I know what you're talking about. It's complicated to hold in my mind at the moment. I don't know why, but
so
I
it's
know what you're doing.
6, 2, 4
Yeah,
from the bottom,
bless
and
you.
then 6, 2, 4 from the top,
Ah, yes, of course.
right?
Yes,
You know what I
yes.
mean? So
Got you.
these, for some reason, they sound. I mean, they're different chords, but they're they have a
Yeah.
relationship like that.
It sounds like something we'd find in Miles Okasaki's book.
Maybe. So the thing is, if you just take that idea and just go up the scale, you get this,
Beautiful. That's so useful.
right?
Yes, got you.
And the middle voices just kind of go against the grain of your other movement. So
Yeah,
these kind of things just
that's fascinating.
kind of come up like that. Yeah.
That feels like very, very fertile compositional material.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a beautiful sound. So.
And that's the it's not a joke, but someone laughed when they said that they'd had the almanacs open on their music stand for 2 years at the same page because they couldn't turn the page over because it was so interesting.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
I can understand why that would be the case. No, that's fascinating. The work that you have done with the almanacs, was the preparation for your own book happening while you were reading the almanacs? Were you getting the ideas for your own books before then, or was this something that's come after reading the almanacs?
Definitely after. Definitely after.
Yeah, so it's afterwards.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Well,
So
I got the almanacs when they came out, basically, and they, I would pick them up every now and then. Sometimes I would just, randomly open a page and just play whatever and
yeah,
see what, where it led me or something. And then just, just doing some work on that, and the Van Epps kind of led me to the basic question of how many moves there are in 3-part harmony.
yeah,
Definitely after. Yeah. But I wasn't really using the almanacs when I was working on the stuff. I mean, when I was working on the book, I wasn't really referring back and forth so much.
I see. Okay, let's take a short break and we'll come back and talk about your own work with the voice motion book and the application of it to your forthcoming album. I'll name it now. Cycles is coming out in late spring, early summer 2024. And I'm looking forward to hearing. I've had a very small preview of it already, and it sounds great. I'm really excited about what sounds are going to be on it. And cool title, Cycles too. It's pointing a finger back at some of the work we've been doing and talking about. So I'll say thank you for this half of the interview, and we'll take a short break and we'll be back with more. So I'll put a pause on the video now. Thank you again, Johannes.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back to Modern Guitar Harmony. We've got Johannes Haage here today, and we're talking in the second half of this session about his wonderful book from 2022, Voice Motion, and published by Mel Bay. It's available online. You can buy it from various booksellers. There are a couple of different versions of it, and the spiral bound version is recommended by Johannes. And you can see the details of the ISBN number ending in 810-5 is the one to get, and you can see it on Johannes's webpage, which we'll have a link to later on. And my first impression was, oh no, not another harmonic mechanisms almanac. There's quite a lot of echo and familiarity. I won't say similarity, it's familiar, and that's useful. But we have these lovely graphics, and perhaps we can start, Johannes, just by you describing how you came up with these graphics and what they mean. So,
Okay. Well, it's just something that evolved from my like taking notes of moving voices. So these little balls there, the little circles are notes of three-part harmony and how they move into the next chord. So you either have one voice moving or two or all three of them, and then they can move in either upward or downward direction, or in parallel or contrary motion, or that's basically with these icons you get all the different ways the individual notes can move within a three-part harmony. Yeah.
And they come around in all of the examples. We've got standard notation. It's in a beautiful layout format, and we have a lot of clear information around the pages. We have pieces as well as exercises, and there are etudes as well as pieces and some explorations of the concepts. Huge amount of information. And I'd say one of the main differences between voice motion and the almanacs is that you're only working with three-part harmony here for the whole book, all 320 pages, 315 pages or so. So could you say something about that decision, that choice, please?
Well, I mean, first of all, when we play, I mean, at least for me, when I play in a band, a lot of times I catch myself playing three voices and maybe adding something, or three voice harmony, a three-part harmony seems very natural on the guitar, and it always always kind of leaves some space for movement, or you can, it's much more flexible than playing big 4 or 5 or 6 note chords. And the focus here was on independently moving voices. So 3 is definitely enough. I mean, 4, if you, as we mentioned earlier, if you want to get into all the possible voice motion in 4-part harmony, not only is that much more, mathematically speaking, but also a lot of the stuff is actually not really playable on the guitar. So that doesn't mean you can't add another note to anything that's in the book. There's actually one page there that kind of goes beyond the 3 notes. Did you see that page?
I believe so, yes.
One page.
Where the back is this? No. Seems to remember it.
It's in the third part. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like
Anyone with a classical guitar background will find this very familiar material. It feels comfortable, but it's full of surprises. There's some really nice, unusual, unexpected ideas.
just that one page. It kind of teaches you how to add another note and find,
I
go
remember.
through those possibilities. So
Yeah. And
yeah, and it, it all came, as I told you earlier, it came from working with the almanacs and also from working with the harmonic mechanisms, and that was fascinating stuff because it kind of combined melody playing and chords at the same time. But at some point I was thinking, man, like he Van Epps, kind of introduced the same shapes and stuff with different fingerings on different pages, and I was thinking, okay, this is the same thing as I did before, and this is another one. So I couldn't really figure out how many different ways there are to move 1 or 2 or 3 voices at the same time, and just kind of have those possibilities as a list or as a clear, presentation. And yeah, that's what I wanted to do, and that's actually what's the main part of the book. It's presenting all the possibilities of voice movement within three voices. And also another thing that I mentioned earlier is that when you work with the almanacs, you always stay within one kind of chord type. So you're not really coming from the actual movement, but you're coming from a certain cycle that produces the movement. So you come, say you're going from C to F to B diminished to E or something like that. Cycle 4, he calls it, C, F, B, E, and so forth. I'm in C major now. That is just, you think about the close voice leading with these chords, but actually you're not thinking I'm going to move these two voices just because I want that melodic movement. Is you kind of arrive at the movement by means of the cycle, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So, which I think is a really cool thing, and it really gets you, to places. It's amazing. But a lot of times when I was playing, I was, playing a chord, and then I would move a note, and that would not result into one chord type leading into the same chord type as in the cycles. So I realized that, a lot of the movement that happens is not included in the almanacs because of that fact. So I kind of wanted to show all the different ways, of course, including what's in the almanacs, because of course, if you do certain movements, then it results into, a triad going into another triad or something. But a lot of this stuff doesn't. So.
And to clarify, most of the movement we are talking about with your diagrams and your notation, it's movements of seconds, and then occasionally it's movements of thirds, and you write a little 3 above the line if you're moving a third diagram.
Well, the first 50 or something. The first, what's the number here? The first 20, 37. Yeah, the first 37 moves are just seconds, right? So everything is just moving in seconds. And then from move 37, everything is moving in thirds. So I'm not writing any thirds. It's just, it's understood that all the motion is in thirds. And then from a certain point, I don't know from which point, from the 57th on, it's a mixture. So you can have one voice moving in a second and another one in a third, and or vice versa, and that makes up the second half of the stuff, because there's a lot of possibilities that way,
And you got to the number 108. Did you have any idea of how many chords you were going to find when you started doing this?
Not really. I'm not a mathematician, so I could have probably, figured that out on a napkin if I was. You know what I mean?
Yes,
But no, I was just going through the possibilities and trying to categorize them. And of course, all of these 108, they appear in 3 inversions, so you actually have 324. But they're essentially the same.
Sure.
108. So, yeah.
And we talked a little earlier on about the symmetries. There's a harmonic symmetry to this doubling of the 108 and extension of the 108 because of the 3 inversions. Triplet doubling, sorry. And the symmetries would possibly have a sonic familiarity because they're inversions of the same material. There's a logical similarity, clearly.
You mean the intervallic reflection there? Yeah.
We talked a little in our first talk today about the reflections, and you're talking about the same things here also.
Yeah. I mean, you mean in the book I'm talking about it, or
Little, yes. Well, you're using the principle. You're using
yeah,
that method. Yes. Yeah.
it's true. Um, yeah. So basically, I mean, if you want to go through some examples or something, I'm kind of
Awesome. So your
basically
part, your
you know
part one
for
starts all 108 moves in close voicing. Part two begins with 108 moves in open voicings, just using a drop two voicing, although we've got a special use of the word drop two, of course, in three-part harmony. And this is new to me.
yeah,
And clever way of thinking of spread voicings, open voicings. And there are other ways to do it as well. So I'm learning a lot here from this. Um, and there is part three and an appendix, which we'll talk about later on. I want to read the contents page to you. Um, yeah, perhaps you could play us a few examples and just to let us have a listen. So besides the exercises, you've got quite a lot of etudes, and you've got some guitar solos written in each part as well, with titles of guitar pieces close enough for comfort. Spread your wings, spread your things and try, and holy freedom. So great title, spread your things and try. Yeah.
um, yeah. Well, basically, I mean, the book kind of starts out with showing all five different types of chords that you know from the almanacs. Maybe the listeners know them already. So, and basically, you can take each one as a starting point for any movement, and that will result in the 108. And um, I mean, if you just use a triad, like a C major triad as a start, basically the whole book, I mean, the first two parts is all written in C major. There's no accidentals or anything. And then in the third part, it kind of teaches you how to transpose the stuff and introduces some other heptatonic scales other than diatonic. We can talk about those
Just
later. Oh,
in case anyone's unfamiliar with the term heptatonic, I'm
oh,
sure
sorry.
people know it. Seven note scales, heptatonic scales.
Right. Heptatonic just means seven note scales, like our major scale. That's so basically the whole book is with some exceptions. It's just the white keys. It's very easy to read. But so basically, if you take like a C major triad, one basic movement would be to move the C up 1 second, right? So that would just be a single voice movement. That's move number two, I would think. And this thing can happen, in this inversion, or you can do the same thing with it with the movement in the middle voice, or right. It's just the three inversions. So this is the same move. This is just one thing to my mind. You can also do it in open voicing, or right. It's all the same thing. It's a triad with the root moving up a second. So when you're familiar with moving around the triads up the scale, you can add that movement to every step, or you do it reversed. Sorry. Or you do it like this, where you skip one, you kind of essentially move the chord in thirds, but with that movement, you connect it connect the chords like that, and you get kind of a nice harmonization of the scale. right? Or you can do it up and down. Something like that. So that's just one move, kind of taken through one scale. And or you could do it in a different inversion, you know? You could do like now it's in the middle voice, or you know? Sorry. Sorry, I was messing up there. So this is just one little move, and but this is just one way to kind of embark from a triad. You know, your starting point could also be like a different voicing, like a fourth voicing or something like that. So, like. You know, that's just something that kind of goes from this one, moving up the top note as a third. And that is just a different move. So every one of those you can use to harmonize melody, or just put some motion into your otherwise stable chords, or you know. And yeah, maybe one more example of like, you know, if you're in a minor, you know, it's the same what I was doing, but maybe you're not only moving up the top note, but maybe you're moving the middle note. You want to move this down, so you end up with. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then I'm thinking melodic minor. Oh. Yeah. So you get this like, and then, so yeah, it's just a different way of moving through the scale, just keeping a consistent kind of move on every step, so to speak. Yeah.
That's the idea with huge implications in Goodrick's terms and Goodrick's words. There's so many possibilities there to play that through all of the cycles rather than just a scalar pattern of seconds. You've got contrary motion in the upper two voices, and if you put that through cycle 3, cycle 4, etc., it's going to sound again.
Yeah, I mean, you could if you want to kind of borrow from him, you could just, you know, take one move and move that in a cycle style, like either symmetrically or diatonically, like he was doing, you know, like if you take this thing, what's that, like a seventh, no, 5, right?
Yeah.
With a voice moving up like this. So 7th, no, 5 in a cycle. Cycle 4, you would go into this, right? F. Is that true?
Yes. Yes.
That's how it goes. So if you add the motion like this to the cycle, you could go like a little bit uncomfortable here, but make sense, right? So you just think of, okay, I'm moving in this case, the root up a second, and you can totally apply it to all the cycles you want. Yeah.
That's fascinating. you've supplied some pieces to go with these examples as well. Perhaps you could play a short phrase or two from Close Enough for Comfort.
Sure, yeah. So
great.
this one, yeah, this is just, I tried to just add one piece for each section, and the first one just stays, because the first section is all in close harmony, so it stays within a seventh. Every chord is a closed harmony. So yeah, I just try to come up with something where the voices move within that harmony. So it's like
That sounds wonderful. And you have similar pieces like this throughout the book in the other sections as well, illustrating your exercises. So part two, you do the open voicings. And obviously, Close Enough for Comfort that you've just played, you're not playing it all in C major. It's got D flats and it's modulating and
yeah.
various time signatures.
I mean, I wasn't really thinking about one particular key. I was just trying to kind of see how the voices can move, and it's kind of based around A flat
yeah.
a little bit. So yeah.
And it's got a kind of Van Epps quality of that, moving voices with sustained notes. So I can hear where it's coming from with the voices that hold as you're moving other voices around them and things, which that's the principle of the book, clearly. It's very interesting material. We talked earlier on about symmetry and your voicing. So when you take a close voicing and drop the middle voice, you're inverting it, you're producing a new open voicing. And your part two is your open voice chords. They're very different animals. They're a little bit more guitar friendly, I find, generally. Although there's still some big stretches on the when you get the minor seconds at some points in the chord, especially on the lower strings. They're the ones I really struggle with sometimes. But I like your way of thinking about the open voicings. You give a nice clear text introduction to the open voicings, and this was interesting. It's not a way I would have thought about open voicings for the last half century or so. I've always thought of them in a slightly different construction way. It's perfectly clear, and it really does put a slightly different light on them for me. So thank you.
Yeah, it's really funny. I always thought that's how it works with the drop.
Yeah. As I say, I've never heard the term drop, but the term drop for three-part harmony. But what you're doing is producing some new inversions of the open voicings. So if you do drop three for a three-part harmony, you're going to produce something quite interesting. And your diagrams later on set them all out. So I'll explain that one of the really interesting features of your book is that there's a complete set of things frequently. And this is the sort of the very useful and cool thing that you're doing. I think it was on page 100. It's very close. There's the big Oh, there it is, yeah. You do these lovely triangular diagrams.
Oh yeah, that one, yeah.
And there's a few of these, and the triangle means you can play diagonally, up and down, or laterally in both directions. So you've got 6 directions in which you can play these lovely chord sequences.
Yeah, it kind of segues into the actual movement, because that's the beginning of the second section, I believe.
Yeah.
That's it kind of shows you what chords there are and labels them. So that shows you all the chords that have the C on the top.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so there's 15 different chords that you can play with a C on top, and then the way they're laid out is that if you play diagonally, there's a certain kind of movement within the chord already happening, just playing through the chords. Or if you play it line by line, for example, like if you just play the first line, just the lower voice, like the lowest voice, will move up or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that kind of gets you into moving voices without thinking about it so much.
It's saving to write 3 pages. You're saving paper and trees and our eyesight, turning pages. It's all on 1 page. I've always been very happy about reading the almanac pages backwards and diagonally, and that's been recommended. So you've actually made it diagrammatic. It was lovely to see this. And these diagrams get busier and more complicated as the book goes on too. There's some really dense ones later on, which they're just packed with really interesting information.
Which ones are you talking about? The big picture thing?
At the back, there they are. These ones.
Yeah, that's just to show that the close voicing and drop 2, or the open ones, it's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. I mean, if you think about the span of 2 octave plus a third, which is kind of what the hand can cover on the guitar, within that span you have all these other voicings that are not covered by part 1 and 2, and that's kind of to show that what else is there. Some of the stuff is not useful right away, but it's just interesting that it's there, so you can kind of apply stuff to these other more obscure sounding.
Yeah, some of these large gaps voicings, they're very obscure sounding, and they were really interesting because I really never thought of them on the guitar before, and it's challenging to
show that they're there, and that they're actually the same chords, like in all these different segments there. They're exactly the same chords, but they're just in different places within the span of the hand.
Again, this is when the guitar gets so fascinating, because all of a sudden you've got 3 more C major chords that you've never played before after
Exactly. Yeah.
so long. And
maybe some kind of move that you otherwise find kind of unuseful maybe totally makes sense with that voicing.
And I'll be realistic to answer the question that people are possibly thinking. We're not going to get the Taylor Swift gig playing these chords, but something really important about them still. And you might find there's a really cool use for them somewhere, I'm thinking especially these strange ones. That really made me think, when you've got a third and then you've got this gigantic gap to the top note, or a fifth, there's something there.
Maybe it's something, you just kind of want to play, and maybe it just gives you an idea for a song or something. It's not that they're totally weird. It's just they're the same things that you played anyways, but in a different voicing. That's it. That's all.
That's it. And I found this really interesting to think through. And you label them the same way. This is what I'm excited by. You're actually saying drop 2 and 3, drop 3, double drop 2, drop 3. So you're doing exactly what the Goodrick Almanacs do with the voicings, but just with 3-part harmony.
Sure. So, yeah. I like the drop terminology. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very useful. It is, and the concept, if it's an unfamiliar one to anyone, it's worth spending an afternoon getting to grips with, because it doesn't take long. And once you have
the drop concept,
it doesn't take long at all. And I always think of it as singers with numbers on their t-shirts. So singer number 1, singer number 2, singer number 3, and it doesn't
Drop
take.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Sings low.
Yeah. So we've got lots going on here. We've got the clarity of the book. I'll stress again, there's so much information set out very well. You've done quite a remarkable job setting all this in typeface yourself. I've done a fair bit of this, and I know how it takes time to do. And the graphics are very enjoyable to use. You're not needing to even think of notes. You think of the voices away from.
Right, you could even put that up on your, on your
Yeah.
music stand and just, play any voicing and see if you can find the movement or something.
And I'm very, very interested in different ways of conceptualizing music and thinking about the guitar. And I read music comfortably, but some people don't. The Goodrick Almanacs were terrifyingly complex when I first opened them and saw the names of the notes. That was just so alien to my
Yeah.
literacy. And the opposite.
I think the almanacs is just, it just really divides. Like, there's people who are intrigued, and then there's people who are like, oh, and they're never gonna.
But it's lovely to see them both on one page and in one book. So this will help people actually develop their reading, but it'll also help readers develop their harmonic awareness. And I think the harmonic visuals are much more clear in the diagrams than they are on the page on the music staves. So that's interesting. Can I go on to section 3, because this was somewhere that you produced something that is almost jumping a little further ahead than volume 3 of the almanacs. So you go for your heptatonic scales and you develop a full set of 7-note scales, and you've decided, or you've established, it's a fact, that the full set of 7-note scales without adjacent semitones is 6 scales, 6 scale types.
Right.
So you can't have 2 semitones together in this set of scales. So you've got your 4 familiar ones, the melodic minor, harmonic minor, the major, the harmonic major with the flattened 6th, and then you've produced 2 new scales that I had never seen on paper before. I don't think I'd heard them either. So maybe you could say a little about your melodic and harmonic minor flat 5s, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been familiar knowledge that there's 6, scales that don't produce adjacent half steps, but these 2 scales that are included there that complete the set are they're both kind of subsets of the octatonic 8-note diminished, the symmetrical diminished scale. So they're kind of overlooked a little bit as their own scales of their own right, maybe,
Can I just jump in? Are they in Slaminski's thesaurus? Did you see them somewhere like Slaminski, or
No.
just in the background for your own music education? I'm curious of origins of things.
Well, I kind of came up. They kind of came up harmonically when. See, the thing is that with the 4 scales that are usually used, you end up with all the 4-part harmony and the upper structures that you usually use. But some of the upper structures that I liked were not represented in the scales. Like, for example, on a dominant scale, you don't get like the sharp 9 and the sharp 11 and the 13.
Okay.
That is never happening outside of the symmetrical diminished, which is a symmetrical thing, and it's like a different world. So and with these scales, you actually get those combinations that are beautiful, and all of a sudden they're all there. If you actually see these 2 scales as their own scale systems, heptatonic scale systems. So, for example, the minor, I mean, the harmonic minor flat 5 is definitely the weirder one, but the
Yes.
melodic minor flat 5, produces these beautiful chords that you play anyways, but they're never really, So, for example, on the second degree, you get which is like a minor, it's like an altered scale with a natural 5, but also with a natural 13, for example. And what initially got me interested in these scales was that when you start playing just the triads of the scale, all of a sudden, like, they produce different inversions just kind of naturally. You know what I mean? So that really got me interested, because this is starting with root position triads, right? And then on the third degree, you get like a
First
B
degree.
natural, and then fourth degree, and then on the you get a B again, but a B minor second inversion, and then so they kind of flip at a certain point, and that to me is a very interesting sound. On a just melodically, I really like that a lot, and so I decided to include those in the thing. Hold on a second. So yeah, that's harmonically very interesting, and so you can use the same idea that I was doing melodically, like I was playing before, like the thing that I did in harmonic minor, right?
Yeah.
Can also be played in in the harmonic, the melodic minor flat 5,
Yeah.
So you get the very kind of unstable sounding, but right?
I could be miles away here, but I'm hearing hints of Django Reinhardt in the background. I want to do some pragmatics
Oh, yeah?
with that.
Okay.
He used strange dissonant diminished harmony at times, especially in the solo guitar pieces.
Yeah. So yeah, so this works. Also, these can kind of go a little bit outside, but they're not really outside sounding so much. It's just one note kind of off where you usually expect it. So it's not like you're going really off the harmonic grid. It's just you kind of tweak the scale a little bit in ways that are not so familiar, maybe.
And again, just to illustrate what you're talking about, in your book you have the 6 basic heptatonic scales. So the 6 scales we're talking about. We maybe need to flag up the harmonic major. It's still quite new to some people who've been playing a long time even.
Yeah, really important.
It's an important scale. It's a great set of modes. And here's something I haven't even told you yet. I'll give you this really lovely piece of information. You add these 6 modes together and your 6 scales, sorry, your 7 modes of each scale, you get 42 modes. And the funny associations, everyone's heard the associations with the number 42 now. And I had forgotten that Douglas Adams, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy guy, he had the meaning of everything as the number 42.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a guitarist. He actually got on stage with Pink Floyd at one point. Played guitar while he was writing his books, and he was a very, very keen guitarist. I Googled him just to see his playing, because I knew there was a little article about Douglas Adams on guitar, and he's got the Goodrick headless Steinberger guitar. And I suspect he was kind of going down these alleys that we're talking about today. So I wonder if he got to
Yeah, I
42.
mean, there's something about heptatonic 7-note scales that, for some reason, for our ears or for our, for us humans, they offer something special. Once you go to 8, 9, the harmony gets really dense, and it's not what most of us want to hear. And if you go less than 7, harmony gets a little bit too, what do you want to call it? Ambiguous, or I mean, there's nice pentatonic harmony, but it's not harmony as we,
It's different. Yeah.
it's not harmonic movement as in like functional or something.
Yeah.
You really get that when you deal with more or less balanced 7-note scales, which
Yeah.
these 6 are, basically the ones. Like, yeah.
So for our people enjoying this chat with you, if you enjoyed the Advancing Guitarist names of the modes, we've got a lot more for you here. And we've got the altered sharp natural 5, natural 13. We've got the Mixolydian flat 9 sharp 11. We've got the melodic minor sharp 5. That's one of the famous ones. Locrian natural 9. So many of them. They've all got interesting names. There's more than one name for quite a lot of these, but this is the kind of thing some of us might enjoy, even eating our breakfast. The kind of thing you can just dream of. So there's some great information here, and thank you for itemizing it and systematizing it. This is going to be a go-to reference page for me. This 6 basic heptatonics and their modes, with corresponding 7th chords and extensions. So you've really itemized it in a kind of information-friendly way, I think, there. That's really helpful. You then go on to symmetrical cycles and examples and extensions. So your symmetrical cycles are major and minor third groups of key centers and things, page 219.
Maybe just get the page so I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Well, with the symmetrical cycles, the idea is you take one chord type, but like a specific chord, and you move it symmetrically, not within a key or a scale, but symmetrically up. In this case, it's all, I'm just taking a major chord. I'm taking it up in, let's say, minor thirds, like cycle flat 3 or something like that. So, then you can add your motion, which kind of produces a diminished scale. But you can also kind of close voice lead it in a way that you like, and then you play the G flat, right? C, E flat, G flat, A. So you it's just an exercise to kind of play the same thing, but move it around symmetrically,
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah.
And I think this is sometimes classed as post-functional harmony or non-functional harmony. We're using different operations than the diatonic harmony.
Right. But it's something, it's something just to kind of to experiment with. So if you are in a harmony, you can just kind of use these cycles to just kind of go out of the harmony and just jump right back in. If you know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm just using the major Triad as an example, but you can use any of the 19 possible 3-part chords and move them in any symmetrical cycle, or in fourths or third, and see, and then if you like that sound, you can add voice motion or something, just as a device to sort of go somewhere else and come right back.
Yeah. And it's very interesting to experiment with these. I mentioned Slaminski before. He's very big on symmetrical patterns like this. And you hear it a lot in post-1960 jazz, in jazz harmony. And there's so much material there to take and make your own. It's so easy to have a personal angle on this and find your own music.
Right.
It doesn't need to be learned and duplicated. It just needs to be assimilated and explored, I think, sometimes. And you mentioned another magic number when you said 19.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, we talked about
talked quite a bit about this. There's a mystery in Almanac Volume 3 where we have the 20 chords listed. I think it's a little
funny. We talked about it briefly. He actually has these two doubles, right? He actually omits one. That's the very close cluster. I think he omits that, and then he just has two that are actually the same chords, but he has two names for them. But he never really mentioned, or he never comments on this thing.
Yeah. He gets us into the game and into the ballpark, and then I think it's down to us to work from there. But
yeah,
both arrived at that conclusion that there's two duplicates and one missing, which is fascinating. You've got the full set of 19 laid out more clearly here, or in a different way, let's say. I shouldn't say more clearly. So anyone using Almanac 3 will find this familiar with the 19 3-part chords. And these are intervalically unique 19 chords.
Right. Yeah.
So the whole group comprise of clusters, fourths, 703, 705, and all of the different types of seventh, all of the different types of fourth voicings, and we get the diminished fourth on the top of a pair, diminished fourth at the bottom of a pair. Augmented fourth, diminished fifth. And 705 can be a minor seventh, major seventh, diminished seventh, and you can play games with those. It's quite strange when you're thinking of 703. I still conceive of these as minor sevenths and major sevenths sometimes, even when the third's missing. I don't know if you do.
Yeah, because the ear, you add them in your mind, I guess.
The 6 chord or a 2 chord, you're kind of thinking more minor a lot of the time. But it's very helpful to have these itemized and set out nice and clearly numbered. That's good. And you've written them several times with the top note C and bottom note C, so we've got more to go with there too. So you get that gigantic section in Almanac 3 where he has the black boxes around chord 17 and 18 in a list of 30 chords on one line. And
yeah.
It's very puzzling, that. It's a strange section. So you've done something useful there. And we've got a short section on building 4-part chords. I've worked on it already. That's the one.
That's the one I was talking about earlier. Yeah, that's the one.
That's useful too. So we haven't left 4-part harmony behind completely. You're still looking at it and exploring it. And that's the point at which I've started to make comparisons with the TBN1 and TBN2 a little with these, and exploring the triads over bass notes in relation to that. But your voice motion etudes follow as well. Do you use any of these regularly yourself? Have you got any that you use in part 3C?
Yeah. Do I use them? Yeah, I practice. I try to practice them and put them in different keys and stuff. It's just, there's the main one. There's 3 different ones, and the first 2 are almost the same, where the second one is just a third up from the first one. So the main idea of the first one is to take a line that is made up of seconds and thirds, right? On top of like a very common chord progression, and kind of harmonize them using the moves, right? So, for example, I mean, I just came up with something. I didn't want to put it on a tune or something too specific because I want people to find their own ways. But I just had this. It's just like a turnaround: D minor, C7, G7, C major, and A7. So, I just thought, on this is the first melody, right?
Is that one, I think?
Yeah. So the melody is, the idea is to take a melody that's already there, which would be kind of something like this. This is on D minor, right? And then on G is like, and then it goes on. But so for the first harmonization would be to say like, okay, this melody, I'm gonna harmonize it with this move. And then over G. Right? So I'm using this one, I'm just using this as a moving top note, right? And I can do the same thing where I'm like, okay, like, I can play this in the next inversion. Same thing, or sorry, right? And the whole etude is it's always the same moves, and it's always in the three inversions. So you can really study kind of certain moves in like a functional harmonic context,
Yes.
And it gets more complex, and and these I mean these etudes are not to be plugged into songs like that, It's just to demonstrate, kind of the workings of certain moves on like a generic melody, and it gives you a couple of ideas how to break up those quarter note harmonies, quarter note melodies too, with the rhythmic stuff. I think you just had it there. And so the reader is, the reader should have their own little melodies and try to, find the moves that makes most sense to them on the harmonies, or, for whatever reasons,
That's something I've found very recently in some of the classical guitar syllabuses. They're finally putting the scale exercises into time signatures. They're giving the students 3/4 and 4/4 and 6/8 for their scale exercises. And for a long time, probably for all the time I was learning, it was just strings of whole notes, and no bar lines and no indication of a rhythm. And yes, you get the accuracy and the placement of the fingers, but to actually learn a little bit about time and counting at the same time as you're doing your melodic practice is very helpful. Multitasking. And that's interesting to see you've brought some rhythm to bear on these exercises as well. So that's fascinating as well. Talk about the piano section and the lovely introduction to the guitar section, which I thoroughly enjoyed reading. It was really refreshing. The big picture and your description of the fingerboard as a with regard to the duplication of notes. So let's see if I can get that page. It's in the appendices.
The idea for that section was just that if you want to use the book, all you kind of need to know is where the notes are on the guitar, and
Yes.
you don't have to be a really quick reader or anything. You just have to kind of find the stuff on the guitar rather, quickly for yourself. So the appendix for guitarists is really to, give you ideas to train that and get more familiar with the fretboard. So
And I'll speak for myself. We don't have to remain the worst readers in the music business. The guitarists should be better readers. I know the bassists and drummers are reading far better than people around me now on guitar, and we shouldn't let them get away with it. We should be working better. And this lovely diagram really sets up quite a lot of interesting food for thought. So you've got the multiple occurrences of middle C to start with. Your C on the B string, your C on the G, your C on the D string, C on the A string, and even way up high you've got your C on the low E. So you've got 5 middle Cs on this standard 20 fret neck. This is a 24 fret neck drawing. So could you say a little about this lovely stripe that you've got?
yeah, those like darker gray sections is just one octave of the C major scale, like and just the way that the same, like the middle C kind of appears across the neck in a diagonal way, like makes you realize that everything kind of works in these diagonal corridors, let's say, on the guitar. So a scale, like just like the section where a certain octave of a scale happens on the guitar is like a diagonal zone, basically. So I just wanted to show that on that page. So depending
If
on the key,
anyone
of
really,
course, it's different, but it's just the way that the guitar is kind of set up. Yeah.
we've discussed this a little before. I've just had a thought. If anyone wanted to go really crazy with this, they could write it out 12 times.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Write it out for everything from
And times 6 for the different scales, maybe.
yeah, yeah. So the stripes would move. That's all. The bands would move
Right,
gradually.
but the idea is that that diagonal setup of the neck is just something to remember. I think that can really open up doors for you for just understanding the fretboard.
Your key awareness is like sunlight and shadow.
Yeah, yeah.
I see it
And
moving.
it helps you to really find all the C's and all the every notes that you.
Yeah.
Actually, you can experience that diagonal thing if you just play the C's after right? It goes from here to here in like this diagonal.
And one octave above that is in that stripe. It's in that diagonal stripe.
It's off, but
The next,
so between this C and this one, you get this zone that kind of goes across the neck like this.
there's your second one coming in on the high string. So there's
Exactly.
your first one on the low C, and it repeats the same thing again. And it's as if it's part of the gamut, the grand stave. And this is the part that fits on the guitar. So there's a bass version,
Right. Yeah.
version if you wish, all of your crazy high notes and things, and
Right.
the things that the dog can hear. So it's fascinating. I love
Yeah,
these.
it's almost like it goes on. It goes on beyond the fret. It's just you just get to
So
grab that part of
yeah.
of infinity. That's what you're working with. Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's diagonal. It's diagonal. It's not really. I mean, it moves along the strings, of course, but it kind of moves across stuff.
Yeah.
I find that interesting sometimes to think of.
Absolutely fascinating. It's a lovely treat after all of the brain work to see something that was so tactile and visual and experiential. So you really, if you play with this, there's something happens. It's special. And again, for people that really want to work on this, it's written down too. So you've actually what you've just demonstrated is written too. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
not just
That was the main point of that section, to get people to really, know everything,
yeah.
know the locations of all the notes on the fretboard.
And you said that you experiment with the piano a little. I do too, and I encourage my students to do some work on piano from time to time, regularly. And you've given a small appendix for pianists. I know I've spoken to a few pianists that have used the almanacs, and including one chap who's actually deduced the almanacs from the description of them, which is a very unusual thing to do. He hadn't seen them, but he'd heard about what was in them, so he deduced it on a piano keyboard. So he worked his own almanacs out from a verbal description.
That's the best way to learn, maybe. Yeah.
It really is.
Wow.
And I've seen the results, they're quite impressive. So again, we've got some interesting diagrams. These diagrams are cool. You should.
Yeah, this is for, just for dropping down or doubling stuff. It's just, yeah, I just wanted to come up with something that shows pianists that this is not only a guitar book, and it's good for composers and choir arrangers, and I hope at least that it's.
Yeah.
At first, I wanted to kind of have it not be a guitar specific book, but then I got convinced that to have it be, it's for marketing reasons. Also, it's good to have it be a guitar book. And
There seems to be 2 or 3 guitar books for every other instrument, one book. It's strange, and we see so many things coming out, but this is quite an unusual one. I'll get to the very end. We've got a glossary as well, so you explain some of the terminology. It's helpfully done, and we get the interval combinations, inversions, chord structures, slash chords, all of those kind of things, diatonics, flat fives, harmonic major, hexatonics, heptatonics, all of the words we're using. You're giving the technical terms, definitions, and I haven't even mentioned the audio yet. And we have the audio components that works. I checked it; it's downloaded from the Melbe website, and you can get access to the audio from the book, and that's really helpful and useful too. Sounds quite good, and it's not essential you can work from the book without it, but it's very refreshing to be able to go to something to double check. And I went to the pieces to check fingerings and whether I was getting the sounds right and things. So I find when I'm working with close intervals, whether you emphasize that middle voice and bring it forward is a big issue on the pieces.
It's not easy, to bring it out.
Probably, but again, well done so much for producing this. It's quite,
thanks. Yeah, fun.
Must have taken closer to 5 years or more rather than 2, did it? Or how long did you working on it?
Yeah, 3 maybe. I was working on it a lot, and I got it done like right before for the most part, right before the pandemic. But I have to say that the last, the editing part and getting it to the point where it can appear like this, that was the most challenging part. Yeah.
It's nice that it's in the same edition that the harmonic mechanisms are in too. You're in good company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm proud. Yes.
Melbe still produces the harmonic mechanisms, so that's cool too.
But were you saying that they're not doing them in the spiral?
Yeah, it's the most recent edition I saw was glued. It was a glued binding, which is very different. But for the younger people out there, I can tell them that my 1984 copy of the harmonic mechanisms has been heavily worn, and the spiral binding's still working fine.
Yeah. I have the spiral. It's beautiful. Yeah, still working.
Dry, it won't rust. It might rust a little bit if it gets wet, but apart from that, that's the thing. It's very good.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Johannes. Maybe we can
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been great again to talk. Yeah.
do another one of these, and I'm sure we could think of 20 things we haven't talked about at all yet. There's a review of your book on the Modern Guitar Harmony website already, and we've started a new library corner with some small accounts of dozens and dozens of books. Please contribute some if you've got some that you would recommend. And we have a substantial review as well as that. So there are 2 entries on the Modern Guitar Harmony website for voice motion so far.
Cool, man.
So I hope that helps a little. And
Yeah, cool.
I'm not under any sponsorship deal or anything advocating it as well. I bought my own copy, and I'm very pleased I did. So thank you. That's
Yeah.
great. Okay.
Yeah, and then meet again, and maybe before the record or when the record is coming out, because that's about symmetrical cycles. There's a lot of symmetrical cycle stuff on the recording, and maybe by then we have some stuff to talk about.
That's great. We didn't actually talk much about that today. We meant to, didn't we? You've got an album coming out called Cycles in late spring, early summer, and it's a quartet album, I think, is it?
Well, it's just trio.
Excuse me.
With bass and upright bass and drums, my long-standing trio. And for this one, we didn't really contribute anything that we wrote specifically, but we played some tunes, just standard tunes actually, in a certain way, and then we used these kind of symmetrical cycle sketches / compositions, but they're really just kind of sketches, to improvise through them. So yeah, maybe I can demonstrate that some other time. Or yeah,
I've seen some of these already. You showed me them. Maybe you could bring a few along next time and we have a chat about them.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, be interesting.
And just as a guitar nerdy question, are you playing the 175 on that record, or what guitar did you?
No. With that trio, I almost exclusively play that Howard Roberts.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Great. We look forward to hearing that. I'm excited. It's going to be fun to hear. I'm really looking forward to it. So I'll say thank you again. Anyone
So
watching,
good to see you.
please check out the Modern Guitar Harmony website, and we've got a Patreon page if you feel inspired to join and to subscribe to a Patreon subscription. Please do. We'll have lots more things like this coming up in the coming months. So thanks again, everyone, for watching.
All right. Thank you.